Okay, I think we are going to get started here for Friday afternoon. We're going to start with the Interagency Commission on School Construction. Laura Hyde is our budget analyst, and we have Executive Director Alex Donahue. And we will start with Laura Hyde. Thanks, Laura.
With the operating budget summary, ISC's budget decreases by $3 million or 16% to $15.8 million in fiscal 24. This decrease is primarily due to the elimination of $3.5 million in general funds for the non-public school security improvements program. And this amount is offset by approximately $500,000 for personnel and administrative grants. Turning to page 2, this is Exhibit 1. This is the overview of agency spending. This chart shows that the allowance for school safety grant program is $10 million, which is the mandated amount in the Safe to Learn Act of 2018 and the majority of this budget. $5 million is for personnel, $386,000 is for contractual services, and the remaining $337,000 is for other operating expenses. Turning to page 3. This is page 3 and Exhibit 2. This is the proposed budget. This shows the decrease for the non-public school security improvements program, a net increase of $179,000 for rent as the agency moves to a new location, and approximately $300,000 increase for personnel expenses. Turning to page 4, this is personnel. This shows that IEC has 41 positions in the fiscal 2024 allowance, which is the same as fiscal 2023. These data are as of January 2023, and IEC reports that the agency actually has 11 vacancies as of February 2023. Out of these 11 vacant positions, 6 are currently posted and 4 positions are being evaluated for reclassification. Turning to page 6. This is Exhibit 3. This shows a timetable of tasks required for Chapter 32 of 2022. In December 2021, the work group on the assessment and funding of school facilities, which was constituted as part of the requirements in Chapter 14, completed its final report. This report included a number of recommendations which were involved in school construction funding, some of which were included in Chapter 32. As part of these recommendations, IEC was charged with a number of tasks related to the funding and administration of school construction. Although the agency has completed some of these tasks this year in calendar 2022 and started others, DLS suggests that IEC comment on the status of agency actions to meet Chapter 32 requirements. Turning to Exhibit 4 on page 9, this shows the status of the cloud-based asset library called INFAL, which would integrate preventive maintenance and facilities assessment data and allow LEAs to access these data electronically. INFAL has 2 main components: a business management system, which is currently under contract and in development, and a facilities data system, which is been delayed, which is currently provided by a third-party vendor, but will eventually be part of INFAL. This project has been delayed multiple times, but is finally underway. So DLS recommends that IEC submit a status update on this project as well as Chapter 32 requirements. The recommended action for this report is on page 11. And this concludes my presentation, and I stand for questions.
Thank you very much. Senator Benson, you're okay with all that? Okay, if we could have Executive Director Alex Donahue come up, and then there are some additional witnesses if you want to come up to the table.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think you've been here a lot. I think you like us.
I know, that's what I was going to say in a second. We want to thank Laura, and we agree with her observations. And as you just said, we have been here 3 times this week, and I think the same senators have been here during our other visits. So first of all, I want to introduce our Executive Director, Alex Donahue, our Deputy Director, Cassandra Viscara, and Tom Lockman, our CFO. We're going to shorten our presentation. If you have more intense questions, we'll be glad to answer them. But as I said, we've sort of done this a couple of times already. from my perspective, as I mentioned before, what we're interested in doing from my priorities is to get out and work with the local LEAs to try to help them try to get the most out of their monies that they can get in terms of construction. And we're going to take the initiative to go out and visit as many LEAs as we can. So with that, Alex is going to make a few comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Very happy to be back before you. As Mr. Chair said, we concur with the recommendations. We're happy to stand for any questions. We've been really working to roll out new regulations to implement the statutes that have been passed over the last year plus, ramp up activities to help get the allocations out to LEAs, which is really about triple what they had been just a few years ago. It's a heavy lift, but we're making great progress and really appreciate the input and the willingness of all of our stakeholders to give us input through processes such as our work group that we're doing now on facilities for the blueprint. And Cassandra, like to add anything?
One question before you do that. I'm assuming that the prices are continuing to skyrocket, or has that leveled off any?
It's going to be tapering off in the near future. The industry sources that we've consulted show that inflation and costs for construction are still relatively high, much, you know, at least
square footage increased from to what last year?
So the historic rate had been about 4 to 5% a year, and it's been between 8 and 10. And on certain factors, certain specific items such as steel, HVAC system components, things that take chips, for example, you know, computer chips in them, long lead times, much higher prices, other materials such as roofing materials. Those things are starting to taper off. A little bit of labor pressure has reduced as well. Industry sources expect that these high prices will continue for some number of months more, but then begin to taper off. So
what does square footage increase from last year? From what
the cost per square foot
Yeah.
is now up to our state level. The last IAC adoption is $385 per square foot without site development and over $400 with site development. So the IAC watches these numbers very carefully so that if the numbers suggest that we need to adjust our official state rate, the IAC can do that even mid-year. And we won't hesitate to move quickly if it appears that that's necessary.
And on that point, sometimes those increases are really project specific. They're regional, or sometimes it has to do with the day that it's bid versus, you know, a month later. We also have mechanisms in place and have approved a number of project specific increases above the 385 so that individual projects who are seeing higher prices than maybe the average are still getting the participation that they need from the state.
You do a great job anyway.
Oh, thank you. They do a great job.
Thank you,
Seriously.
Madam Chair.
Okay, are there any
Kyle, you were
questions?
saying? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, next we will have the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Kelly Norton is the budget analyst and President Heidi Anderson is here, I assume. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, we do have public witnesses that I skipped over. Let's see, it's Abigail from the Baltimore Jewish Council. Garrett O'Day from the Maryland Catholic Conference, Rabbi Ariel Sadwin, Agudath Israel of Maryland. Was I close? Did I miss anyone else? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. We are here today to talk about the non-public school safety improvements program. But just to first start, you know, with the budget and analyst comments about it and the funding for the program, we're a little bit confused because the budget books, page 134, had talked about the program being for the public and the non-public school program. And just a little bit of history on that from our perspective last year, with what we understood or maybe thought was an oversight, they blended the two programs when the budget was introduced. And you could see in our testimony, the amendment we suggested was exactly the budget language that was done last year to separate out the non-public safety improvements program, which provides a safer, more secure day for our schools. Reasoning that the state does have separate procedures and policies and a separate application and has had for 5 years for this program. And to be blended in with the public schools not going through the LEA, that's not how it's done usually anyway, but it would also, we'd have to go back and tell nearly 200 schools that they won't have their safety and security allocation that they've had before. You might get 5 or 10 of them that might get a competitive grant with the LEA. And that's what we're here to talk about today. So we're not entirely sure if maybe it was an issue that needs to be separated out like it was last year, like this committee did last year. So if that is the case and they were cutting the program, we do plead to have that separated out because it's so important for nearly 200 schools. So thank you.
We will check that out and confirm what it's all about for you.
Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, for the record, Abby Snyder, Director of Government Relations for the Baltimore Jewish Council. Me too. And on top of that, just to point out, page 134 of the second volume of the budget book, it says that this funding is for public and non-public schools. And in the analysis, it seemed like it was not for non-public schools at all. So we wanted to bring that to your attention as well, just to make sure all is
I'll check it out
kosher.
for you.
Thank you.
How about Ariel Sadman?
Good
Good afternoon,
I see you every day.
members of the subcommittee, Madam Chair. Ditto and more ditto, but obviously the theme is that our schools are very much in need of these security dollars. And whether somebody has it out for us in another part of the budget, then we've already been discussing. We definitely hope that we can separate this out and, hold on to the 3.5 million.
We will get it confirmed for you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll do the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. Kelly Norton is the analyst.
We're going to start on page 4. Okay, and we're going to start on page 4. Exhibit 1 shows total undergraduate enrollment and category change from fall 2017 through 2022. Total undergraduate enrollment increased by 123 students from fall 2021 through 2022. As is illustrated in the exhibit, first-time, full-time students experienced an increase of 30.5% in fall of 2022 after years of decline. Exhibit 2 on page 5 documents the changes in undergraduate applications. As shown in the exhibit, the number of applications decreased in fall 2022 by 19.8% to approximately 6,300. The yield rate, or the number of students who actually enrolled from that total, increased to 11% in fall 2022 compared to the previous fall. And the acceptance rate of 86% was the highest rate recorded over this period. Moving to student performance, exhibit 3 on page 6 provides the second and third year retention rates for full-time, first-time students. The second year retention rate had fallen within the 2020 cohort, but rebounded in the 2021 cohort to 70.9%. The third year retention rate had its largest decrease since the 2016 cohort, falling 4.6 percentage points in the 2020 cohort compared to the previous year. Exhibit 4 on page 7 provides the 4- and 6-year graduation rates for first-time, full-time students. As shown in the exhibit, the 4-year graduation rate has remained below 20% since the 2015 cohort. The 6-year graduation rate increased to 36% for the 2016 cohort. DLS has asked the president to discuss UMES's strategies to improve graduation rates. Exhibit 5 on page 8 provides the 8-year graduation rate by Pell and non-Pell recipient status. Both non-Pell and Pell recipient students, whether full-time or part-time, were more likely to graduate within 8 years at UMES than another university. Exhibit 6 on page 9 shows the estimated costs of attendance versus the average net price for full-time in-state students by income level between fiscal 2019 through 2021. This exhibit shows that the average cost of attendance over these years was $24,543. However, the actual net price for students when aid was awarded averaged $14,922. In fiscal 2021, the average net price was $11,826 less than the cost of attendance. This exhibit also shows the cost of attendance will vary depending on income level. For example, in fiscal 2021, it cost a student $8,095 with a family income of under $30,000, but $19,472 for a student with a family income of over $110,000. Exhibit 7 on page 10 shows the amount of institutional aid awarded and total dollar amount of awards provided by category. The total number of institutional awards increased 58.6% between fiscal 2016 through fiscal 2021. Need-based aid accounted for 66.1% of institutional aid in fiscal 2021. The U.S. Department of Education reports the median debt for graduates by field of study in an effort to give students a better picture of outcomes at the program level. Exhibit 8 on page 11 illustrates that the median debt of students ranged from just over $18,000 for engineering majors to $30,000 for rehabilitation and therapeutic majors. And computer and information science majors had the highest median earnings at $58,000. Moving to the budget, Exhibit 9 on page 13 provides the budget changes for unrestricted funds by program from fiscal 2022 to 2023. The largest dollar change was in instruction, which increased by $7.4 million, and spending on institutional support also increased, growing by $1.5 million. Moving to the federal stimulus funds, Exhibit 10 on page 14 provides an overall summary of the total funds that were allocated to UMS through the various Higher Education Emergency Relief Fund or HERF stimulus programs. In total, UMES received over $53 million in federal stimulus funds, of which $8.4 million was required to go directly to students in the form of emergency financial aid payments. Exhibit 11 on page 15 provides the overall distribution of allocated and planned HERF spending by UMES from fiscal 2020 through 2023. UMES has until June 30th to expend $24.4 million in ARPA funds, and DLS has asked the president to address how the ARPA funds will be expended. The proposed fiscal budget found in Exhibit 12 on page 16 includes a general fund increase of $3.5 million, $2.8 million in cost of living and merit increases, and $9 million in Chapter 41 of 2021 funds or HBCU settlement funds. In total, when excluding state pay-go funds, UMES total state fund allocation increases by $9.7 million or 15.1% relative to the adjusted fiscal 2023 working appropriation. After accounting for the salary increases in the HBCU settlement funds, state funds increased approximately $3.1 million. We've asked the president to comment on how UMES plans to use the remaining additional $3.1 million of state funding. Exhibit 13 on page 18 provides a breakdown of unrestricted revenues by source and total unrestricted funds. The ratio for these levels remained roughly stable from fiscal 2018 through 2020. In fiscal 2024, state funds account for 55% of unrestricted funds, and UMES anticipates total unrestricted funds to grow to $117 million in the 2024 allowance. The personnel data for the university is found on page 19, which identifies that as of December 31st, 2022, the university had over 85.86 positions vacant above the expected turnover amount, which can be attributed to the creation of 63 new positions in fiscal 2023. Moving to issues, which began on page 20, covers the most recent Office of Legislative Audit's fiscal compliance report. There were 3 repeat findings. Finding 1, UMES did not adequately monitor its food service vendor to ensure that required facility upgrades, investments, and commissions were received. The next finding reported that UMES had not established sufficient controls over student residency determinations and subsequent changes, and certain non-cash credits recorded in student accounts. And the last repeat finding was UMES did not adequately control and account for mail collections and did not ensure that electronic collections were properly deposited into the state's bank account. We have asked the president of UMES to comment on what actions have been taken to address the findings of the December 2022 audit report, and also to specifically comment on what actions have been taken with regard to the audit's repeat findings and repeat recommendations. While not a repeat finding, OLA addressed the previous audit's issue of the ongoing Maryland Hawk Corporation and the Hawk Plaza student housing complex situation. OLA determined that UMES should seek reimbursement of federal grant money from the foundation that was dispersed inconsistently with applicable federal regulations. OLA noted that due to the foundation's financial situation, it was unable to determine if it had the ability to repay any of the funds. We have asked the president to address the status of Hawk Plaza and the return of the funding from the foundation. DLS operated budget recommended actions are found on page 22, which is to see the University System of Maryland overview for system-wide recommendations, which concurred with the governor's allowance. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, welcome.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair. I am Heidi Anderson. I have the pleasure of serving as the 16th president of the University of Maryland Eastern Shore. And to my left here is our new vice president, Anastasia Rodriguez, who's been with us about 140 days now. So,
Bet you dragged that old senator with you today too.
and I was about to
Senator
say,
Mathias,
and sitting
welcome.
behind me is former Senator Mathias.
Thank
And
you.
then, of course, my support person over here, my husband, Leon Roberts.
Well, that's the most important right there.
So, and we have USM staff supporting us
Great.
behind as well.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, let me say thank you to the committee, to the subcommittee. And also I want to take a moment to say thank you to Ms. Kelly Norton for that very, very thorough analysis. But more importantly, Kelly, for actually recognizing the mission of who we are as a university. We are a university which you should have received our testimony. And we are focused on what I call students from modest means. Those students who come to us are first generation, low income, and that is who we are. And so I appreciate that Ms. Norton has recognized that in her analysis as to our rates, our graduation rates, retention rates, et cetera. And before I go further into answering the questions, I also want to thank this body and former Governor Hogan, all of the General Assembly over the past who approved the HBCU settlement funds. Those funds to the 4 HBCUs have really helped all of us, and we appreciate that. And we're moving forward to make sure we do due diligence with those funds based on the statute. And of course, I want to say we agree with the analyst with her comments. And I will make the rest of my remarks very, very brief because I know that you've had a long day already and it's Friday. And so I will go ahead and get started. First comment, the first area was to ask the president to explain strategies to improve graduation rates. As you know, HBCUs throughout the country, we look at a 4-year, 6-year graduation rate, just like all institutions. Typically at HBCUs, because we do take students we take them where they're at, and that's how we move them through our system. So we don't really turn away anyone. And you'll notice that our Pell is about 50% of our students, but our students who come to us Pell is really, I think, a misnomer because we have over 98% of our students who are need-based. And so that means we're getting students and those who don't even qualify for Pell. If you think about the threshold for Pell, and if students, if their parents need just a little bit higher, that's still not enough money, and they get no funds. And so we really are taking in quite a few students who are need-based.
And tell me again, how many students do you have?
At this particular time, our enrollment is fall enrollment was 2,520.
Okay.
So, but strategies that we have dealt with improving graduation rate are a number of these. And the reason I mentioned that about the need base is because we take the students where they're at. And one of the things we find is that students come to us and they are not as efficient as they could be in math and in reading. And so we put in some strategies to make sure we improve that. COVID has made it even worse. And yet we will make sure that these particular strategies are working. Let me describe them for you.
Can I stop you 1 second?
Mhm.
Did you, because I've heard this from some of the other schools that have been in front of us. Did you find that students had a really hard time transitioning from being at home with COVID to coming back and actually being in the college lifestyle? Did they have a hard time with that?
That's a good question, Madam Chair. Let me respond yes and no. What we did with our students, because who we are, many of our students come to us because this is their only home. Many of our students come from backgrounds where they're either from homeless areas or from families that they basically are not able to go back and have an opportunity to study and have a quiet space. So we went ahead and opened our campus back up before any other institution in the state did. We also were very proud to say during COVID, we kept all of the students on the campus without any interruptions. And we did that by making sure they were safe with COVID protocols, but also making sure that we had activities for the students to do, and we had a good educational environment that was hybrid fashion. So those who wanted to be in the classroom with the professor were socially distanced in a way that it kept them from having to have any problem. I think also for us, because we're in a rural setting, very different than the students who are in an urban setting that may have had a little bit more transition trouble. What we found was the students who didn't come back at all, when they did return that second year, yes, they had trouble acclimating. We still have students who are like this. They're into their phones or their tablets, and they don't even have that social connection. So we're trying to make that change. But on the graduation rates, one of the things we're implementing is what we call math supplemental instruction. This is SI, and I'm sure you're very familiar with it. This is a situation where students have a tutor who kind of sits right there, right by them while they're in the classroom, helping them through their math. And the research has shown this is a very, very good strategy. It works very, very well. And this is one of those areas where it gives students a more personalized impact on their math, and it really helps them move forward. Another strategy that we implemented, and we did so last summer, we doubled it, was our Summer Bridge. We have always had a Summer Bridge program. Just to give you some background, Summer Bridge is for students who have not met all of the criteria to be fully admitted, but we realized that they could do a little bit of extra help. So we bring them in the summertime, put them through an intensive 4-week program where they take math, reading, writing, some study skills. And in the past, we've always had 25 students in that. With COVID happening, we recognized we needed to increase that. So last summer, we quadrupled it. We brought in 100 students. 98% of them go right into the fall semester. And what we have seen in the past is we have a 95% retention rate from that throughout the 4 years. So this summer, 2023, we're going to double it and do 200 students. Another strategy we're utilizing, which we call Focus. And as you see in my testimony, it's called Future Outstanding Cohort of University Students. And we mean just that, future cohort. We recognize that students who fall below a 2.0, they need a lot more hand-holding. So this particular program will not only add the mentoring, the tutoring, but coaching to make sure we are making right each day, we're working with the students, making sure they don't fall behind. And then the last program that we have that we're implementing is called the Hawks Mentor Program. And this one is not just a peer-to-peer mentor program, but it is also a staff member or a faculty member helping those students. We have a number of other strategies, but those were the top ones that I wanted to share with you that we see are going to improve our graduation rate. And like I said, with our Summer Bridge last year, doubling it, this year we're going to, quadrupling it. This year we're going to now double that number, and we know it's going to be very, very effective. The next item was, asked the president should discuss the reason for the increased expenditures in instruction and institutional support. Well, part of why I wanted to start by thanking you for the HBCU settlement is those funds have helped us actually make sure we rectify existing programs where we may have had some, where we needed to strengthen, but also build some new academic programs. So in my testimony, you have seen that there are 10 new academic programs that we have gotten through the approval process, and those particular programs have allowed us to use the monies that came in from the settlement for those instructional needs. In addition to that, you saw some of the programs that we have on the horizon that we're working through our system at this time. So that's where those increased expenditures in instruction and institutional support will be needed for those particular areas. The third was ask the president to explain how the stimulus funds will be expended. First of all, we appreciate the federal government and all of the support that it gave to all institutions around the country in giving us stimulus funds. Those funds were very, very helpful. And of course, it was very helpful making sure that students up front received a certain portion right away. We have funds that are still remaining, and we're going to use them in 3 areas. First of all, we're going to continue to support our students from a financial aid standpoint. So those who continue to have maybe back bills or others, we're going to make sure we take care of that. A second area, we are still working on stabilizing our IT infrastructure, so our information technology structure. Unfortunately, on the Eastern Shore, construction costs not only have gone up all over, but they have especially gone up in our area. Trying to get certain tools and things, technologies on that area, it has increased the cost. So basically, we had a lot of delays in getting things moving forward. And so that's where we're going to spend. And then the third area, there are still some remaining health and safety issues that we're working on. And that's where we see expending those funds. The next area, the president should comment on how UMES plans to use the remaining $3.1 million of state funding. As you know, this was funding that was given to our university for statewide fringe benefits and statewide adjustments. And this was based on DBM's summary that was given to us. So the monies, those particular funds will be going toward helping health insurance and other benefit costs. And those costs, as you know, are mandatory if you have employees. So that's how we're going to spend that. And then finally, I have to say that I have been there since September of 2018, as you know, and basically audit findings. I came in with a number of audit findings. We've been cleaning those up. I had promised this body you would not see anymore. I have to say, I apologize for that and embarrassed that we come to you with 3 repeat findings. But here's what we have done with that. And so basically OLA is asking me to report on those findings that we had December of 2022, and especially the repeat findings. One of the things that I've done is I have a new vice president, like I said, for admin and finance. She comes to us with over 15 years of audit experience. But more importantly, VP Rodriguez comes to us with some best practices that we have not had at our institution. So in just her limited amount of time she's already been there, she has hired a compliance auditor who started in January of 2023. And that person, Dr. Elliott, is doing a wonderful job cleaning these up. The second thing I can tell you is all of those repeat findings have now been fixed. They're no longer there. But more importantly, we now have put in processes and procedures in place to make sure that we do not have not only repeat findings in the future, but any audit findings. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure we fix that area so that both of us can sit here and say to you, in the future, we hope that when we come back to you, we will not be talking about any kind of audit findings. So. Okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you. And then the last thing was the status of the Hawk Plaza and the return of funding to the foundation. The Hawk Plaza was sold December of 2022. And prior to my coming, I've reviewed the records, and from what we can tell in our review is that those funds have been returned. That has been addressed. And so the senior leadership, myself and I, that's where we are on that to date. We are happy to answer any other questions or to let Rodriguez say anything if you need her to add anything.
Do we have any? Senator Benson.
Thank you very much for your, let's go back to the last, the Hart, what is that called?
The Hawks Plaza, Senator?
Hart's Plaza?
Hawk Plaza.
The Hart Plaza.
Hawk
Can you
Plaza.
explain to us what that is? And
Yeah.
are you saying it was sold?
Yes, it was sold. That was under a different management, and that whole Hawk Plaza, let me explain what that is. That is an apartment complex that is off-site of the campus. And it was a facility that our campus had a partnership with prior to my arrival. And they have now sold it. It's under new management. We are working very, very diligently with that new management, and we lease out rooms for our students there, our graduate students. Many of our students, because I require freshmen to stay on campus, the upperclassmen, as you can imagine, they like to be able to have a place that they feel is off campus. And so this allows us to have the graduate students have what they feel is real apartment style living, and we lease with no problem with this new particular manager.
But you just indicated that you all sold it.
The plaza was sold,
The
yes.
plaza is.
Yes, it was sold.
That's
under
the apartment complex?
Yes, the apartment complex. It's no harm to us at all.
Why was it sold?
From what I can tell, there were a number of years going back and forth under management. And so, like I said, this is all before my arrival. I don't think that I can't give you many of the details at this time, but I don't think there was anything that harmed our university in the process.
So for those students who would normally live there, Are they still housed there?
Yes, there's no problem with the students who are there. Like, that's what I'm saying. We lease the space from them, and and that space is for our particular students.
So the University of Maryland Eastern Shore leased that space.
That's correct. Mhm.
How does that, talk to me about the public relations. What are you all doing in the way of attracting students, to the Eastern Shore? Because from what we see here,
Mhm.
there's been a decline.
Oh, it's a decline in students?
Has that been a?
That's
decline?
correct, ma'am. Since 2015, there has been a decline in students. However, now we're seeing that go up. So what we have done are a number of things. First of all, we tried to work on making sure we get our reputation out nationwide. One of
So
the
how are you
things,
doing that?
through a number of strategies, marketing strategies, social media, which is where students go to a lot more these days. We have a lot of career fairs where we bring students over to the shore. If they're here on this side of the bay, we will have buses come over here, pick them up to take them over to see the campus. One of the things you have to do, I believe, is to sell our campus. We have to bring people there because we want them to see it. When it's in a rural area, they need to see that it's safe. It's also very large. It's very comprehensive. The other thing that we're doing as far as strategies, we have recruiters that are all out. We get students from every county in the state of Maryland. 70% of our students are Maryland, but the 30% that come from outside of the state of Maryland, we have counselors now, we have alumni that we're working with, and we have trained on how to do recruitment. And so we have students who are coming to us from other states as well as international. And the third thing we're doing, we have radio ads now, we have billboards that are posted. These strategies are things that we're doing that had not been done in the last 4 or 5 prior to my arrival. So we have a number of ways that we're enhancing our recruitment. Before COVID hit, our applications had increased higher than 5-fold higher than they had before. When I arrived, our university was still doing paper applications. So one of the things I did immediately was took us to what's called the Common App. The Common App is a nationwide common application process. So students who apply from high school, they apply to this central repository. And if they happen to want to go to an HBCU, the Black Common App kicks in and that sends their applications to us. And we had not utilized that in the past. So that helped us not only increase our applications, but also from a yield standpoint, that's how we started putting these strategies in. And then the very last strategy that I will mention is a personalized touch. So when students apply, they may get on their phone a personalized text message from us, email, social media hits about, hey, we see that you're interested in UMES. We know that you're interested in aviation sciences, and then it's personalized to them. And I said last strategy, but one other thing we did was we started giving their financial aid packages complete within 2 weeks after they apply. When I arrived, what I learned was that we were delaying giving students
I've
financial
heard
aid.
that several times this week. that
Right.
You don't give them too much time to think about
We would
it.
give them too much time. We give students, we'd say, you've applied, but then we wouldn't give you your financial aid. We weren't giving ours out until May. Well, by that time, most students have already decided. So now we package within 2 weeks of saying, you've applied, we have an interest in you, and we make sure we get your aid out to you.
Great.
And we make sure it's for the whole year now, not just one semester at a time. So you can tell I get passionate about this, and there's a number of strategies we have put in place to increase our enrollment. Before COVID hit, I can tell you these numbers would have been a lot higher. So yes, they've gone down, but they are now going back in the right direction now.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Does that answer it for you? Okay, any other questions? Okay, we're good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you.
Okay, we have the aid to community colleges. Kelly Norton is the analyst. We have Dr. Daria Willis, the Howard Community College president, Dr. Mary Bolt, Cecil College president, and Dr. Brad Phillips. You've been around here quite a bit too. Maryland Association of Community Colleges executive director. And we're going to start with Kelly.
Thank you. Funding for the community colleges in the state is primarily funded through formulas with the most prominent being the Senator John A. Cade funding formula. Additional funding is also provided to support retirement payments for community college employees. As shown in the operating budget summary on page 1, the fiscal 2024 budget rose by $41 million or 9.4% from fiscal 2023 to 2024. Turning to page 5, with Exhibit 1, we can see the successful persistent rates for the community colleges. Persistent rates are the means by which we evaluate whether or not community college students are successfully meeting their goals. This includes only students who have attempted at least 18 credits in their first 2 years after enrolling at the college, and then who after 4 years are either still enrolled, have graduated, or have transferred. Those students would then be considered successful persisters. As you can see in Exhibit 1, the rate in Maryland has held fairly level at around 70% for these students, increasing to 72.7% for the 2017 cohort. If you'll turn to Exhibit 2 on page 6, you can see the persistent rates broken down into 3 categories, those being students who entered as college ready, students who required developmental courses and completed them, as well as students who did not complete the required developmental coursework. As you can see, the developmental completers persist at a rate that is just below college-ready students, though they don't graduate or transfer at quite the same rate. Meanwhile, developmental non-completers are far less successful at persisting. This emphasizes the importance of students completing developmental coursework. Exhibit 3 on page 7 shows the successful persistent rate by community colleges as composed of the 3 groups I just mentioned. As you can see, Prince George's Community College has the lowest persistent rate in the state with 61%, while Hagerstown Community College has a persistent rate of 83%. Exhibit 4 on page 8 shows how community colleges are performing with their students who require developmental coursework. As shown, Baltimore City Community College had the highest portion of its students require developmental coursework at 92%. Cecil Community College clears its students through developmental coursework at the highest rate, with 89% of its students who need that coursework completing it, while Prince George's Community College has by far the lowest rate, with 53% of its students completing their required developmental coursework. We have asked the director of MAC to address the factors that led to the change in the share of students requiring developmental coursework and what lessons can be learned from the colleges that had extremely high percentages of developmental completers. Exhibit 5 on page 9 shows the distribution of the different categories of students in the state. As shown in the exhibit, just under 28% of students are considered non-persisters. The largest portion of this total are the developmental non-completers, which represent 13.3% of the total cohort. Moving on to page 10, we have the graduation rate and transfer achievement gap for minority students in the state, which is shown in Exhibit 6. This gap is illustrated in exhibit with both African American and Hispanic students falling below the all students category. Since 2011, all groups have experienced growth in the 4-year graduation and transfer rates. Exhibits 7 and 8 on page 11 and 12 look at the enrollment of the community colleges. As seen in Exhibit 7 on page 11, total community college enrollment has steadily declined since 2012. In fact, total enrollment has decreased 34.3% since 2012, falling to 95,317 students for fall 2022. Exhibit 8 on page 12 tells a similar story. There has been a steady decline in full-time equivalent students enrollment for in-county credit students, which peaked in 2012. As can be seen in the exhibit, there has been a marked decline in both in-county credit FTEs, while non-credit FTEs has experienced the first increase since fiscal 2017. We've asked the director to discuss the steep decline of in-county credit students at the community colleges. Moving to the federal stimulus funds for the community colleges, Exhibit 9 on page 13 provides the distribution of HERF spending by fiscal year. As shown in the exhibit, roughly $57 million in HERF spending will be allocated in fiscal 2023. Moving to the proposed budget, the discussion of the fiscal 2024 allowance is summarized on page 14. And Exhibit 10 shows the distribution for the different categories of funding. As shown, funding for the CADE formula makes up 82.6% of total funding, while retirement is the next highest portion at 13.2%. Exhibit 11 on page 15 provides a summary of how the declining enrollments at the community colleges, plus how the mandated statutory funding percentages increases has impacted the grant awarded per full-time equivalent student. As is shown in the exhibit, the grant per FTE will increase significantly from fiscal 2022 through 2024. growing to $5,727 per FTE, or $2,146 or 59% over these 2 years. Exhibit 12 on page 16 shows the audited FTEs at the community colleges has continued to decline. Between 2022 and 2021, there was a 6.5% decrease in FTEs, and this decrease has led to the continued increase in grants per FTEs. Exhibit 13 on page 17 shows the changes to funding from fiscal 2023. The most significant change is found in the CADE formula, which increases by $38.2 million. In total, there is a 9.4% increase in aid to community colleges funding when compared to fiscal 2023. Moving to the issues, which begin on page 18, the one issue discussed focuses on tuition, fees, and student aid for community colleges. Exhibit 14 on page 18 illustrates that tuition and fees at Maryland community colleges has been growing. In 2022, the average tuition and fee level for Maryland community colleges was $4,905, which is over $1,000 greater than the national average. If you turn to the next page, you can see tuition and fee rates by community college. In Exhibit 15, the dotted line is the maximum federal Pell Grant amount that students can receive. You can see based on where that line is in the graph, how much that line would cover in county tuition for all of the state community colleges, which would be met, but only at Baltimore City Community College and Hagerstown Community College would out of a county tuition be met. And Montgomery College and Garrett Community Colleges in particular have very high out of county tuition rates. In fact, their rate is more along the lines of public four-year institutions in state rather than the state's community colleges. Exhibit 16 on page 20 shows institutional aid and Pell Grant aid provided. Pell Grant aid is significantly higher than institutional aid, with $99.3 million being provided in fiscal 2022. The data is self-reported by the colleges to the Maryland Association of Community Colleges and DLS. I will note that the declines in Pell Grant aid provided should not be especially surprising given the overall declines in community college enrollment that were previously mentioned. Additionally, the institutional aid numbers do not include the HERF emergency student financial assistance. If you turn to page 21, Exhibit 17 shows the institutional awards by institution. Allegheny College provides the greatest institutional aid award per 100 FTEs to its students at 93 per 100. Prince George's Community College is giving the largest amount per student, with institutional aid awards reaching just over $2,200. This may have to do with the fact that Prince George's Community College has implemented a promise scholarship, but you can also see in that chart that the usage of this scholarship may not be very high, as it's reporting only 15 awards per 100. The DLS recommended action is found on page 22, and that is the request report on community college enrollment decline and the use of increased state funding per FTE. And with that, I conclude my presentation.
Thank you.
Mhm.
You've done a great job. You just slid right into this position and you've done great this year. So
Thank you.
we've enjoyed having you. Okay, we have a team coming up to the table. Dr. Willis?
Well, good afternoon, Chair. I will take responsibility. We had changes on presidents. So we have the president of Prince George's Community College, Felicia Williams, and we have the president of Hagerstown Community College, Jim Clobber.
Well, come on up.
But we also do have, in solidarity for our budget analysis, Daria Willis as well, the president of Howard Community College.
Okay,
So if you don't mind, they prepared remarks.
okay.
But I will kick us off.
Remember, we have your remarks. So
I
if
will.
you want to just kind of give us the highlights, that would be wonderful.
I sure will, Chair.
Go ahead.
Again, my name is Brad Phillips, the Executive Director for the Maryland Association of Community Colleges, and we too want to thank Kelly Norton for her analysis, and we do agree that the study would be helpful to talk about our enrollment issues. I'll take just a brief minute and then I'll briefly summarize the responses to your two questions, but you do have our written testimony. But I just want to take this moment to brag about how we have achieved the 29% funding per FTE in our CADE funding formula that derives from the 15 community colleges that are funded through the CADE formula. The origins, and I think we've become unmoored by that percentage tie a little bit. So I want to help explain Exhibit 11 in particular as to why it looks like enrollment's going down and our funding's going up. What's really being achieved is equitable distribution of funding. We're tied to what you provide to the public four-year institutions, and that generates our aid. And it goes back to when our formula was created back in the 1990s. And I found an old document that really discusses sort of the origin of the formula. And it came from another blueprint, Madam Chair, the blueprint for quality that was established to come up with sort of the guidelines and principles. And one of those was equity and funding among community colleges in relation to other segments of higher education. And we really think this is an opportunity to really brag about what we've been able to do and what you've been able to put in the budget for community colleges and support us. And it would be great to see, so perhaps in the 90-day report, instead of a line that says we've reached the maximum statutory funding percentage, you could say we've actually achieved parity and equity and funding across segments of post-secondary education in the state of Maryland, which would be a wonderful thing for you to say. With that, I'll move on briefly to the questions. We are, in fact, doing very much to help our developmental students. COVID is a different kind of situation, and it's really kind of made it will take some time to dig out from the learning loss as a result of that. But we have changed the way that we look at our developmental education offerings. It used to be where you couldn't get through math. It was a barrier. We've actually began to internalize, well, how can we help students get through sort of these developmental courses so that they can be successful in their college level work? So we've designed multiple pathways for math so that students that are not going into STEM do not have to study calculus pathway. They can take a statistics pathway. We've really partnered with our school systems to look at multiple measures, including GPA, so that students with an equivalent GPA can go directly into college level work, and they assess that information and that data to know where that GPA point is. It's been extraordinarily successful.
Brad, has it gotten any better though? The kids coming out of high school, are they any more prepared? I mean, we've been talking about this since I was on the school board 20 years ago, kids being prepared for
I know.
community college.
I think we were beginning to make strides right when the pandemic broke, and you're seeing some of this in the data as well. So it could be a lot worse, but I think we are being masked by what was happening during the pandemic. So it's just a big asterisk in almost all this developmental data for at least the coming few years. The next question that you did ask us, unless there's any more questions, is about the steep decline in our in-county credit students at community colleges. And it's true that we have been going in a decline. There's multiple reasons for that. We do have some positive news that even though we're down overall this year, our first-time full-time credit students are actually up over 8%, which is definitely not the trend nationwide, which is down 1.5%. So we're seeing, you're going to need more than 1 year of data to be able to say you have a trend, but some positive signs there. But we are really looking at how students are accessing post-secondary, and it has shifted. It's changed before the pandemic, and it's gotten a little bit different as a result of the pandemic.
Do you think that more kids are wanting the online courses instead of just going to the campus?
Yes, that's a definite factor for some, but they're also looking for shorter term credentials and licensures and certifications. They're not wanting to go to 2 years to do associate's degree. And we've seen an enormous enrollment boost in our continuing education offerings. In fact, if you look at I think it's a 23% increase from year to year in those offerings. And in enrollment projections that MHEC produces, we're showing almost a 40% increase projected in the next 10 years versus a 14% in our credit on enrollment. But we have to also reform our financial aid policies to meet the students where they are as well. So that's something that we're really hoping we can accomplish this session too, with some legislation that's floating around, and really align strategically how we can help students access post-secondary in a better way as a tool to help and boost our enrollment as well. But it's demographic and it's psychographic. There's issues like you can get a good paying job now, so do that instead of go to college. So we have a lot of different variables, but we will study and definitely report back some of the findings. And with it, I'll be done.
Thank you. Do you want to make some comments? Comments? No comments?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee. I am Felicia Williams. I'm the 9th president of Prince George's Community College. And it's an honor to be here, having taken that helm in the middle of the pandemic in 2020. I just want to share with you that we are deeply committed to improving our student outcomes. It is very difficult, I have to tell you, to sit in this room last year and this year and to hear that we are really the lowest performing in a number of measures that were just shared. I just want you to know that we have a commitment to looking at student success in a much more intentional way. But I also want you to understand the community that we are serving. We are an area where we're widely known for being the wealthiest Black community in the nation, but our growing population is also the poorest in the state of Maryland. And I think that we're at this place where we're learning how to serve our constituents that need us the most. And it means that we have to actually grow, and we have to reimagine, and we also have to meet our students where they are. And so as we're in this period of innovation, I simply want you to know we're really committed to student success and to measuring that in the most intentional way. And that means that we have to also address the complexities that our students bring with us as they come into our classrooms in the midst of it all. So developmental education, top of mind for us. Let me also just speak to the measure that always looks at our institutional funding. That measure is because of the ratio of students we serve compared to the level of the allocation that we receive for our local promise scholarship. So it's always out of balance because we're fairly large, but our local promise allocation is fairly small. But we are so grateful to our county council for providing those dollars, because without it, we wouldn't have the resources to be able to meet that bridge of students who are not Pell eligible. And frankly, that's a growing population of our students as well. So I know that you all are well versed in the work of community colleges. I simply share with you that there's so many dynamics that are confronting
Oh
our
my gosh,
local
a lot.
communities, and we're
Yeah.
committed to addressing those.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time.
I have several different students that I love to work with the community college level, and I'm running into so many kids that get to the end of the school year and they want to go to college, but they don't have a clue. But we've gotten people, I've got Germantown campus of Montgomery College in my district. And then we've gotten them to kind of take the kid by the hand and get them registered for classes and check on them. And I'm trying to think, what was the name, the word that they used for from Morgan that they're using for counseling students?
Intrusive advising.
Intrusive. And I think we're doing that. I mean, I think that's the way we're going to get these kids to be successful. It's the environment we're living in now, and it's what we have to do to make them successful. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Dr. Jim Clobber. I'm president at Hagerstown Community College. I almost feel like I'm at home this week, because I know the many kind things that you've said about Washington County. I know Senator Benson, Hagerstown is her home, and Senator Corderman is my senator. So it's good to be here. I've not met Senator Bailey yet, but we might make him an honorary.
We're not writing you an extra check today, though.
That's okay. That's all right. I just want to just, I'm not as eloquent as my colleagues. I'm kind of a plain spoken person, but I want you to know that, some of the things behind the curtain where this CADE funding is going to go to the point of helping us run our institutions. And I think one of the first things that comes to my mind each and every year is IT security. Senator Corderman can tell you back in Christmas time, Washington County was debilitated by a ransomware attack. And, I looked at that and I said, I never want that to happen at our institution because of the mountains of information that we have to maintain and keep. We spend about $450,000 a year on IT security. That's just on the software, not on the
And isn't
personnel.
it a shame we have to do that?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am. Absolutely. And this year, our cyber insurance went up 54%. There are only like one or two insurers left that will even write you. So, it's just increased costs of doing business. With the blueprint coming on next fall, we're going to have a lot more high school students on our campus, and that's great. We're excited about them. But with that comes an obligation to make sure they're safe with public safety. We have an additional duty of care for minors on our campus. But I also don't want my campus to be like Fort Knox and people not feel comfortable they can go on there. I want it to be a welcome, open environment. And we're certainly working through with that with our public safety so that they're unaware
that they, have any concern on that, at that facility. The last thing is, I tell you, I love being here in Maryland. I'm from the South, and,
Never guessed that.
I know. It just accent gives me away. But, coming from South Carolina, where the educational slogan is "Thank God for Mississippi," it is good to be here where higher education gets funded. And, I get a burr under my saddle coming from there where, you have students there and you have just inadequate equipment to train them on, and they graduate and they go off to work on something wholly new because you're left behind. And here with full CAPE funding, that is going to allow me to buy the computer terminals. It's going to allow me to buy the advanced manufacturing equipment that I can to make sure that our students, when they finish with us, whether credit or non-credit, that they go into the workplace ready to go and are ready to go to work. So I want to thank you for getting our funding.
That's been one of my crusades for a lot of years.
Yes,
and I've
ma'am.
worked with Brad a lot of years on that. Yes. Okay, did you want to say something?
I would just
I don't
introduce
want to leave
myself.
anybody out.
Oh, no, it's okay. I spoke on Wednesday, but in the House. But thank you so much for the opportunity. Madam Chair, I am Dr. Daria Willis, the 5th president at Howard Community College, and I took the helm in December of 2021. So it's been an honor to be here. I am in full support of our CAPE funding formula. And I just want to say that although that Howard County is one of the most affluent counties in the nation, according to U.S. News and World Report, the college significantly we have an underpinning of people who have need, demonstrated need. Each year, we keep going up in the number of Pell Grant students who need support. This year, we're at nearly 50% of our student population, but that just highlights that we have more and more students that we have to support with their basic needs. So we do appreciate everything that you all are doing to support us. We ask that you continue to bring the full CAPE funding formula. I ditto everything that my colleagues have stated, but I do want to say we're having a Come to Jesus meeting on my campus on Monday about developmental education, because it's our goal to completely eliminate it from our books and to develop co-requisite models to get our students the support that they need. So we hope to launch that project soon with the support of you all and the CAPE funding. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have a great new governor who is, Governor Moore has said over and over and over again, we're not leaving anybody behind. And that's where this all heads to. We've got a lot of affluent, well-educated students, and we have some others that need a little bit of hand-holding, and we have to bring them all with us.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you all. Any questions or
so much.
comments from the committee? I think we're good. Enjoy your afternoon.
You too. Thank you.